this is Mental Resilience for Founders Part 2. For those who wasn't present, sorry, for the first part of it, I'm just going to do a quick recap on some of the points that we did cover, just so you can be up to speed with it. So we did look at the two key questions. The first one being, who or what are the controllers in your life? And what this was about was looking at, what is it that controls you? What is it that determines if you make a decision or you delay? Who are the people that, you know, may influence you in a positive or in a negative way? What are the things that are stopping you from progressing and going forward in the things that you know you were destined to do? What are those controllers in your life? And the second question was, do you value the way people see you more than you value yourself? And what that means basically is, if you place more value in what other people say and think about you, you are being led and controlled by other people rather than your own passion and purpose. And so it's really important to remember that there are people who are based on their limiting beliefs, will make decisions and accusations about what your potential is based on their own frame of reference. And if you validate that person more than yourself, that means that you will be a victim to their limiting beliefs. And so it's really important that we are aware of the value that we put on our own self, our own ability, our own knowledge, and that we don't allow other people to rob us of our potential. We also looked at the mind, and that it is a muscle, and it's a muscle that we need to develop just like every other muscle in our body. And we looked at 4 different ways, which was our thoughts, our words, reading, and learning. And it's by these 4 methods that we are able to sharpen our mind, that we can be strong and we can be mentally resilient. We also looked at the supercomputer, and that our mind is that supercomputer. It is greater and more powerful than any computer that has been made. They actually tried to make computers to mimic our brains and how it works. But with any computer, it is only as good as the program that has been put into it. And you are the programmer of your mind, of your supercomputer. And so depending on the positive or negative thoughts that you program into your mind will determine how effective that computer will be. We also touched on mental resilience, that bounce back ability and what it means. But we also looked at the inner critic, okay, that enemy within, the self-sabotage, the things that we tell ourselves that hold us back, that keep us bound. And then we also looked at fear, false evidence appearing real, that universal human experience that we all go through. But it was about looking at how we manage that and the way that we address it. And when we choose to face everything can rise, then we can overcome. And so that was just a quick snapshot. And the last thing that we finished on was looking at our USP, our unique saving point, the things that you can do, the way that you can operate in to help you to cope, to manage, to overcome and thrive through difficulty, challenge, and change. And so it was about finding out what your resourceful self is, you know, and I said for people to write your list, you know, have your own list of resourceful self, things that you can do. So this was an example that I gave of some of mine, you know, and it's about finding out what are those things that you are good at? What are those resourceful selves? What are those things that you are? What do people say about you? What do people admire about you? All of those things are resources that you can use when you're going through difficult situations. And so when you get into a situation or a circumstance and you feel stuck or you're not sure what to do, what you do is you lay out these different resourceful selves and you say, for each of that different style, in this situation, how can I be responsive? In this challenge where I need to address someone's behavior, how can I be directive? With this problem, how can I be creative? Where this went wrong, how can I reflect on this? How can I be a reflector to see what I could do differently next time? When I see that someone's feeling a bit low and a bit down, how can I motivate them as being a motivator? And so you can use this as a great tool to help you to navigate through any situation that you may be facing, because it helps you to organize your thoughts about what options you have and approaches that you could take. But the most important thing about this is that it empowers you to start everything from a position of strength, from a position of your assets, from a position of your potential. And so for those who missed the first part, do make sure you do this. This is a fundamental tool that will help you to be mentally resilient as you're going through any difficulty and any challenge in your life. And so one of the things that is really important for us to be aware of and to be mindful of is that if we want to be mentally strong, if we want to have mental fortitude, mental resilience, mental fitness, we have to give up on bad habits. We have to let go of those habits that don't serve us, of those mindsets, behaviors, and attitudes that are counterproductive. And the first one that we need to look at and be aware of is the "it isn't fair" mindset that holds us back. And, you know, quite often we will look at situations that come up in life, and when we operate out of "it isn't fair," what that's doing is it's making us not be able to accept, not be able to find a solution, and not be able to look at how we can change or even manage during that time period. It causes our world to shrink and your opinions of how you can move forward to be limited, because it stems from a place of defeat and hopelessness. And so it doesn't mean that we can't be down, and it doesn't mean that we can't have times where we feel confused or we don't know what to do. But when we hold on to that and we keep that mindset 5, 10, 15 years later, always looking back on that situation from victimhood, then it doesn't allow us to grow. It doesn't allow us to develop. And you'll see when we look at the bit of neuroplasticity, why that can be so dangerous for us. The second mindset or bad habit that we need to let go of is the why questions. We always ask why. And the problem with that is that often we don't know the reason why. So it's like a maze. When we ask ourselves, why did that person do that? Why did this happen to me? Why did I have to go through this? It traps us. And it's like trying to get out of a maze where you don't know the next way to turn. You don't know what the answer is. And so what we have to do is that we have to find ways of navigating through situations by asking the right questions. Why questions keep us looking backwards in the rearview mirror of what's already taken place. But what questions move us forward for our future? What can I do to change this situation? What are my next steps now? What can I do to ensure this doesn't happen to me again? What can I do to make sure I better this relationship? So what questions are very powerful because they take us forward. Why questions take us backwards. And that is why, even in coaching and stuff like that, they say don't ask why, because people don't know why. But we can look at what we're going to do to change it, what I can do to better myself, what I can do to take this first step in making my situation become better for me. The third one that is really important that we become aware of is when we are amplifying our situation by our thoughts. And so what can happen is something happens to us and we amplify it by how we think on it, by how we ruminate on it, by how we tell ourselves how bad it's going to be. And it's really important that we be aware of this, because as I said in part one, the average human being experiences 60 to 70,000 thoughts a day. 90% of those thoughts are rumination. And so when we are ruminating and we're amplifying and we're building up and we're really pushing those thoughts in a certain way, it can lead us down a dark and dangerous path. And the interesting thing is that it won't make the situation any better by worrying. And there's a thing that's known as the worry chain, where the worry links onto another worry, and it takes us down the wrong path. But when we amplify the issue, it just creates more worry. And so we don't need to make a bad situation a terrible situation. You know, even sometimes when we talk about something that happened, I had the worst day ever. And really, one thing went wrong. And so it's really important, remember going back to how we can train the muscle of our brain, the words we use. Words are powerful. Words bring life and take away life. They bring strength and make us weak. And we have to be very careful of the words we're using, because your brain and my brain listens to every single thing that we say and takes it for gospel. And so you can keep speaking things over yourself and into your life and then wonder why it is that certain things keep manifesting. And so it's really important that we become aware of how we are amplifying things. Amplify the good things, amplify your potential, amplify how great you are, amplify how your business is going to flourish, amplify how you're going to be the best version of yourself this year. Those are the things that we need to amplify. Another thing that we have to be very aware of is predicting the terrible and difficult future. There's so many people that are fortune tellers of doomsday thinking. We look at things and we can imagine in detail how bad it's going to go. Not how great it's going to be, not how we're going to flourish, but how bad it's going to be. And this type of thinking weakens us. See, wisdom says that we should avoid thoughts that weaken us. And so we have to be very careful, because sometimes we can become experts in seeing what will go wrong. There is some people who find a problem for every solution. No matter what you tell them, they'll find a problem of why that won't work. And then they wonder why their body is the way it is, their mind is the way it is, because they're constantly feeding it negativity. And so this mind trap robs your motivation, your joy, and your vision. Because when we're constantly thinking of what's going to go wrong, how bad it's going to be, all the reasons why it won't work, we are robbing ourselves of the fuel and the energy that enables us to move forward. And so this is why it's be careful what your diet is. And when I say diet, I'm not just talking about food. I'm talking about the news. I'm talking about the media. I'm talking about what you're allowing to go into your ear gates, your eye gates, because they shape you. So it's really important. Be careful of what you are feeding yourself. Another really important thing that we have to be aware of is the burdens that we are carrying of the past. The expectations, the negativity, the past mistakes, the things that went wrong, you know, all of this baggage that we can be carrying, sometimes months, years. And, you know, it weighs us down. It's like a sack of potatoes continuously on your back, day in and day out. And it robs us of peace. It robs us of joy. It robs us of strength. And so we have to be really careful, because if not, it will keep you stuck in the past and it affects your changes. And so many people are stuck in the loop when they wake up into yesterday mentally, and their body is reacting and responding to the fears and the failures of what happened in the past. And so they are never living for the present or for the future, because they are stuck in the past. The past, even if you made a mistake, even if it went wrong, is meant to be a lesson and not a prison sentence. And when we're holding on to that past, we can never be experiencing the beauty of today, which is a gift. That's why we call it present. And so your past, is something that is a learning experience, and it's not something to keep you bound. It's not something that you need to hold on to and allow it to determine your present and your future. Because your future is dependent on what you do now. And so it's really important that now, today, is the greatest gift you can ever have, because you can turn around any situation and circumstance by what you choose to do today. We cannot change what happened in the past, no matter how much you wish, try, or think on it. But what you do today will make your tomorrow. The other thing is about carrying other people's expectations. And sometimes we are holding on to so much bondage because of other people's expectations. Not what you want for your life, not what you want to do, not what you feel is right, but what other people are expecting from you, what other people are saying you should be doing, how other people are saying you should be. And so it's really important that we become aware of this as well, of not being in bondage and held captive by other people's expectations. Because this extra baggage is what causes us worry and stress and burnout. And this is something that only you can free yourself from. This mental affliction is only something you can make changes about. And so I want you to be aware of where you are carrying the baggage of other people, where the expectations of what other people said is driving your decisions. Like what I said in the recap, who are the controllers in your life? What are the controllers in your life? Because it's your life. And I tell you this, that we will all have a lifetime to live inside of a box. It's called a coffin. So while you are alive today, be free and don't allow yourself to be boxed in by the opinions, the attitude, and the judgments of others. You were born original. Don't die a copy. And so whatever or whoever isn't adding any value into your life, it's time to separate. It's time to let go, and it's time to be free. And so it's what I call the butterfly effect. You see, in order for that beautiful butterfly to be able to manifest, it has to go through a dying process. It has to go from that, caterpillar transformation, metamorphosis into that butterfly. And so the question is for you, do you feel that you are a caterpillar state in terms of your mind, in terms of your well-being, in terms of your business, in terms of your goals and dreams, or are you the butterfly? And if you are the caterpillar, what do you need to die to today? What do you need to let go of? What do you need to free yourself from? What mental mind traps have you been holding on that you're saying, today is the day I'm breaking free? What things of the past are you saying, no longer will you be a slave master in my life? And it's about making that change and that transformation so you can begin to shine in your greatness, so you can begin to do those things that you were born to do, that you can begin to live in the freedom of knowing your value and worth. Whatever or whoever isn't adding any value to your life, it is time to separate. Now, it's not easy to do that. And there is a whole process involved in that. So I'm giving you a tool that's a very effective tool that I found very beneficial in my life, and it's helped many other people. And it's called your anchoring thought. Because when making these changes, when trying to change things, you come up against the rats, you come up against the inner critic, the reoccurring afflicted thoughts, all of these things that try to keep you bound and stuck in the old way of thinking. Our own mind doesn't like change. It likes familiarity. And so when we try to change, it even tells us things to keep us going back to the status quo of what we're used to. And so we need to have an anchoring thought, something that we can use to keep us grounded. Just like an anchor is used to keep a ship in that place when it's docked, we want to be docked in that rightful place of positivity, of hope, and seeing a positive future. And so your anchoring thought is there to keep you balanced and have a positive state of mind when you are going through difficult situations or when you're about to revert back to those old bad mental habits that afflict you. And so it should be something that's positive, something that makes sense to you, and something that aligns with your core values and beliefs. It has to be something that is connected to something deeply rooted in you, so that when the time comes, when it really hits the fan, you can draw upon this because it's something that's connected to your why, something that's deeply important to you. So here are some examples of things that could be used as an anchoring thought. Everything happens for my learning. Yeah. So you either win or you learn. You never fail. You either win or you learn. Another one is, I am greater than this experience. So regardless of what's going on, that doesn't define you. Your identity isn't defined by if you succeed or fail. It's your character and who you are that defines you. So you're greater than this experience. If it went well, you're still greater than that experience. If it didn't go well, you're still greater than that experience. And the third one is, I am a different person now. And this is a great one for when your past wants to remind you, when people want to bring up things that you've done in the past. I'm a different person now. I'm greater, I'm stronger, I'm more responsible, I'm more resilient. This is not going to break me. And so, what is your anchoring thought? Take time to think about that. And you don't just need to have one. I have many. But have your anchoring thought, that thing, that trump card that you will call upon and use when the situation calls for it. And so it's really important that we understand you are the rainbow in the midst of your cloudy thoughts. And so when there is doubt, when there is worry, when there is fear, when there is anxiety, when there is stress, when we're not sure how the business is going to go, when we don't understand how we're going to make it through to the next step, when things don't seem to be working out the way that they should, you have to connect to your anchoring thought. That thing that will ground you, that thing that will get you, kickstart you back into the right process. And then after you use that anchoring thought, you draw from your resourceful self list and you say, this is what I can do in this situation. I can use this characteristic to help me to get to A, B, C, D. You have to use tools to get you through the difficult situations. And these are proven tools that have helped countless individuals to make those changes so that they were able to manifest their greatness. And so one of the things that is so great about each and every single one of our minds, our brains, is that regardless of how awesome it is, even the smartest of smartest, it is still limited to only think on one thing at a time. And that is a beauty that we can use to our advantage. Because even in the midst of a difficult situation, if you think positive, if you focus on the solutions, you can change the way you see everything. Because we don't see life as it is, we see life as we are and through our frame of reference. And so some people see everything as a difficulty, and some people see the opportunity in every difficulty. And so it's really important that we understand, what are we focusing on? What is the narrative that you are telling yourself in the midst of the situation you're facing right now? How do you manage, deal with, and cope with situations? Do we just focus on the fear and the anxiety and the worry? And it's not to say that we never experience those, but the question is, when we look at the law of averages, what is it that you are focusing on more? Because if that is what is your daily bread, your outcome will be predictable, because that is going to determine the energy you have. That is going to determine how you look at things, how you address things, and that is going to determine how much you limit the possibility and the things that you can do. But if we choose to focus from a standpoint of hope and gratitude and finding solutions, nothing can stop you. Things can only delay you. And it's not to say, look, we're going to experience failure. There's going to be problems. We're going to have disappointments. There's going to be moments of uncertainty. We're going to have times when we're angry. There's going to be stress. And there's going to be barriers that present themselves in our life. And you know what? It happens to every single human being. But resilience is how we manage and find our way through that. It's how when failure comes, that it doesn't mean final for us. It's that when there is a problem that comes, we look at things from a solution point of view and how we can deal with it. It's managing the disappointment that it doesn't hold us down and bound for 5 months. It may be a day or a week. And it's when there is uncertainty that we use courage to overcome that. Because fear is a response, but courage is always a choice. And it's how we deal with the stress through mindfulness, through deep breathing, through using the tools that we have in our arsenal. And it's about finding a way through the barriers. Where there is a will, there is a way. And for every single one of you listening to my voice, no matter what it is that you're currently facing, there is a way out of it. And there is someone who has already gone through that and made it through the other end. And so I want to encourage you to focus on the positive, even in the midst of your situation, your worries, and your concerns. And the solutions and the answers will come to you, because where the mind goes, the energy flows. And so the question is, can the brain be rewired? Like, if I'm prone to be anxious, can I change that? If I'm always fearful and that holds me back, can I change that? And you'll be pleased to know the answer is yes, you can. Yes, I can. And so neuroplasticity is such an amazing thing. And what it's basically about is about how we are able to change and adapt the very chemistry of our minds. And there's a saying that says, neurons that wire together, fire together. And so what happens is, within our minds, we have the capacity and the ability to change how we think, feel, and behave. And so synaptic activation is basically about when you do something, it sends a chemical reaction in our brain. Now, if we do that thing just once, okay, and then we stop doing it, it doesn't bring a change in terms of how the brain is functioning, okay? So imagine it this way. Imagine you have a garden that is filled with weeds. Weeds are everywhere. You can't see any grass, it's just weeds. And imagine you cut down one of the weeds and you leave all the rest. That's what weak activation is. You just do one thing once and expect it to change. But the more that you frequently operate and behave in a certain attitude, or you have a certain way of thought, then you create a strong and a frequent activation. And that is the equivalent of cutting down every single weed in that garden. And so when we're thinking about thoughts, and when I was talking about the mind traps that we need to get rid of, if you can imagine, I get up and I have one positive thought, but then for the rest of the day, I'm amplifying negative situations. What I'm actually doing is causing neuroplasticity to take place in a counterproductive way, because my brain is being conditioned in a pathway to worry and be anxious. And so what we can understand from neuroplasticity is that dependent on what you are doing frequently, those neurons that fire together are wiring together, and they are helping you to be more productive in those things that you are doing. That's why we create habits. Habits are well-traveled pathways. So If I gave you an example and I said, when you're tying your shoelace, which shoe side do you take first? Which shoelace do you tie first? You don't know. It's automatic because it's a habit. Neuroplasticity has taken place there. If you've been driving for 5, 10, 15 years, you don't need to pay attention and in terms of like no one talk, you need to really focus because you know you're going to gear one, you're reversed. You don't need that because it's become automatic. Neuroplasticity now is you can be talking, hopefully on your hands free in the car while you're driving and still be perfectly able to drive and navigate safely. And so neuroplasticity is so important. But I want to show you something about this that's really important to understand about the bright side and the dark side of neuroplasticity. So, neuroplasticity makes our brains more resilient. Okay. It enables you to recover from stroke, injury, and birth abnormalities. So, it's so powerful. Research has shown this now. There is so much research around this. You can learn new ways of being and responding to conflict. So, you know, when someone says, I don't like conflict, you have the ability to become good at managing and dealing with conflict through neuroplasticity, but you need to train and practice it. And in many cases, you can even overcome depression, addiction, obsessive compulsive patterns, ADHD, and many other issues. So neuroplasticity is something that in whatever area it is that you want to grow and develop, the more that you practice and shape that, you can form pathways in your brain that enable you to do that. But on the same token, it has the counterproductive side too. Because neuroplasticity means the brain is always learning. It's learning from every single one of your thoughts, those 60 to 70,000 thoughts that you have each day. And the brain is neutral. It's not biased in any way. Whatever you feed it, it will eat from. And so it doesn't know the difference between good and bad. And it learns whatever is repeated, both helpful and unhelpful, thoughts, actions, and habits. So remember earlier I said about the brain is a muscle. So you want to train it in the muscle of gratitude, of positive thinking, of having anchoring thoughts, of knowing your potential, of understanding your resourceful self. And you need to repeat the actions that you want to mimic, that you want to manifest in your life. Having courage, being proactive, doing those difficult things. And the more that you do it, you form habits which are well-traveled pathways. So what happens is neuroplasticity may entrench depressive, anxious, obsessive, and overreactive patterns if that is what you are continuously doing. So I always say to people, you are the gatekeeper of your own destiny. You are the CEO of your life. You are the person who will determine your success or whether you don't reach the goals that you want. And it all starts in the mind, which is why I said in part one, the mind is the battlefield. And so you need to train your mind because everything happens twice in life. First in your mind, and then second in reality. And so we can use the power of neuroplasticity. And the interesting thing about neuroplasticity is that even when you visualize, visualization is so powerful. Even when you visualize, do you know that the same chemical reaction happens in the brain when you visualize something to when you actually do it? Many athletes and people who have been rich and successful have used this process, including Oprah Winfrey, Will Smith, Jim Carrey, Arnold Schwarzenegger. All of these people have equated visualization to their success because it shapes your brain in the pathways so that when you then actually go forth to do that thing, you're in your mind's eye, you've already done it. So if you need to be more confident at making sales, begin to visualize yourself being confident doing that. If you need to be more have more public speaking skills, then start to visualize you doing that, because what you're doing is you are creating neuroplasticity, and you will then be able to walk in that attribute. And so what I want us to do is to look briefly at the circle of influence. And this was by Stephen Covey, who is the author of the book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. If you haven't read it, I encourage you to read it. It will be life-changing. But what he talks about in this is the circle of concern and the circle of influence. These two forces are opposing forces. You cannot be operating in both of them at the same time, and whichever one you operate in will then diminish the other one, okay? And so I want you to think about yourself. I'm gonna get you to split into groups in a minute to discuss this, but I want you to think about right now, what are you operating more out of with the situation that you are facing? Are you operating out of the circle of concern, or are you operating out of the circle of influence? Okay. Now, when you are operating out of the circle of concern, these are the things that begin to manifest. Limiting beliefs begin to drive your behavior. You see, every single behavior that we operate out of is belief driven. If you delay in doing something, it's because you don't think it might work. If you don't push forward in something, it's because there is a fear or a doubt or worry there. If you do not stand up for yourself, it's because in some way you feel insecure about something within yourself. So every behavior is belief driven. And in that same token, if you go forth and do something without even batting an eyelid, it's because you believe that you have the potential to do that. You see, confidence equals commitment. And so it's really important that we do understand with whatever you are doing or delaying on doing and procrastinating in doing, there is a belief behind that. There is a rat, a reoccurring afflicted thought. There is your inner critic that is whispering in your ear. There is fear, false evidence appearing real, that is driving that delay, that, avoidance that you're operating out of. And so the circle of concern, the bigger that becomes, the more you focus on your past, the more that you allow the emotional baggage of previous experiences, the more that you say, what if it goes wrong? What if they don't like me? What if I get it wrong? What if I don't pass? The more you hold on to regrets. All of these things are based on a foundation of the circle of concern. And it destroys your relationships, especially your relationship with your vision, your goals, and your dreams. But if we choose to operate out of the circle of influence, then that expands and our circle of concern diminishes. And so we're looking at things from the connections that we have, how we can source and outsource things, the people that we can connect with and do things together to make things more effective. When we're looking at our previous victories, yeah, this is difficult, but I've been through X, Y, and Z before, and I got through that. This is going to be a piece of cake. When we're using visualizations to help us to imagine and see the potential of our victory. And by doing that, we are shaping and programming our mind through neuroplasticity. When we are asking for help, asking people to help us, finding out those places where we can get help and resources from. When we are identifying our resourceful self and the skills that we can use, that, yeah, this is difficult, but you know what? I'm very good at being solution focused. What can I do? And you action plan and you do some brainstorming to find a solution. When you're using the affirmations, those words that start with I can, I will, I am, those positive things that you say to enforce the right environment and energy inside of you. Because every thought that we have causes a chain reaction that we call an emotion, and that emotion will dictate how we think, feel, and behave. It's when you understand the resources that are available and you utilize them and you operate out of a growth mindset. You see, the circle of concern is a fixed mindset. The circle of influence is a growth mindset, things that you can do to change and adapt things.